Morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us, all very prompt in your various homes. I'm guessing everyone's still at home. We have Ed Cunningham there, who is partner at the country department at Knight Frank. Rupert Wiggin.
Hello.
Of Rupert Wiggin Property Consultants, who are specialising in advising clients on the sale and acquisition of prime London residential property. And Catherine Hutton of Hutton Bubear. Have I pronounced that properly?
You have, yeah.
Property search and development consultants and sales specialists who all have very individual roles in, I guess, the country and London to a degree, sort of property market, and have hence, I would imagine, had very interesting 12 months where I feel we're kind of coming out of it. Everyone's got a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel. The sunshine's helping. And the last time I did one of these, it was all a bit doom and gloom with the people who were on. But I think things are slightly brighter. Ed, I'm going to start with you. Give us just a little update on the current sort of country market, both, I guess, here in the UK and overseas.
Yes, I mean, I'll comment on here first, if I may, but I mean, incredibly busy, and really since the easing of lockdown last May, we've been inundated with buyers. Apparently this year we're up, I think there's something like, what is it, sort of 104% number of viewings in relation to last year. So I mean, it's staggering. I mean, admittedly, we started late last year. It was end of May. But basically, we've been inundated by buyers from London. So it's the London market. It's those wanting to get out of London, seek more space, have a better lifestyle, probably less commuting. You know, I mean, they're all working from home. I'm working from home. I'm sure everybody else is. Catherine and Rupert, you are. You know, we're all there. We're all doing it. It's all very capable now that we can do it. So it's great.
It's sort of driven, I guess, by COVID and the change in people's working practices and environments and stuff like that.
Yeah, purely driven by COVID, and as a result, we've had a hugely active market. We've had nothing since 2008. You know, the country sales market has just bobbled along. Yeah. There's been no real growth to talk about, and it really wasn't until last year that probably we saw a growth of, I don't know, I mean, the analyst was saying sort of 7.8% or whatever, but I think we'll see even more this year, and that's because of shortage of stock. Yeah, we can come on to that later maybe.
And Catherine, so I guess that kind of, Catherine, plays into your hands a little bit as an agent, a buying agent, effectively. Would that be your prime role, the buying agent?
So we're just buying in the country only. So that's what we do. And we've seen, you know, to sort of reinforce Ed's comments, we have just seen huge numbers of London buyers coming out sort of in their flocks looking for good schools, good villages, good commuting. Although strangely, actually, the commuting's become less and less important. It always used to be within sort of 10 minutes of a good train station, whereas now our searches are sort of going further and further, as people are feeling that actually the need to be back in London or in the office every day may not be there. Yeah.
And Rupert, I'm hoping this doesn't mean you're twiddling your thumbs in London and no one's there. Presumably you're still busy.
No, we're really busy, actually. I mean, we're so lucky because the London market's been trading. I mean, as Ed said, since the easing of lockdown last year, we are seeing more and more buyers, though, the London buyers, having a look at going to the country as well. But you know, it's almost, rather than having their second homes in Verbier or the south of France, actually, they're getting the place in the country, and I haven't seen that for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And you know, the country market, you've almost seen two sets of buyers. You've got the usual people who are moving out and always have done, and then the other set of buyers who just say, actually, we want to have somewhere in the country because we're worried we're going to have further lockdowns.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. But the London market has been strong. You know, like the country, we want more supply.
Yeah.
The demand is very much there, and I think now we're starting to see a bit more normality. And you know, now we've got the next 3 months are the busiest 3 months of our year, and so therefore I think we'll start seeing more and more stock coming on. But the demand is very much there. There's no doubt.
And does that mean naturally that we're seeing country prices rise?
Well, I mean, Ed will answer that better than anyone, but certainly in my mind, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think it's going to be driven by scarcity. I mean, there is no stock at the moment, and so houses are coming on, and you know, you've got 2, 3, or 4 buyers after the same property. So of course, it's going to drive the prices northwards. And yes, property prices are creeping up, definitely.
Right.
Definitely.
And rental
Rupert,
prices as well. Does that affect rentals?
Well, I think rental. It was interesting because at the beginning of when we got released from lockdown. Getting out of jail, sort of, as it were. But when we were released, it was interesting because a lot of the London buyers were either trying to find something, and as Rupert said, you know, second home or main primary home. But a lot were saying, look, just find me a bolt hole I can rent anywhere. Doesn't matter what it is, where it is, just find me something outside. And, you know, Devon, Cornwall, I think that's been in the press recently, but they've been absolute hotspots as well.
Yeah.
For a, you know, get a little cottage or somewhere, just a hideaway, really.
Yeah.
So that's gone well.
And Catherine, what's your advice for people who are in London looking to move out? I mean, if there's a load of them, presumably it's competitive. How would you plan to handle it?
Competition is really high at the moment. It's really, really high. You know, we've already had, I don't know, 3 or 4 calls over the weekend of more people wanting to come out to the country. So, you know, the backlog is quite strong. What we really need is some more stock. No pressure, Ed, but we really need is some more stock just to kind of alleviate that pressure. And actually, it'll be very interesting to see now we've got Easter out of the way. Now we're coming out of lockdown to see how that changes things. But really, whilst there is no stock, almost there's no point really gearing yourself up to move. It's at the moment there's just a backlog of a lot of buyers.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I think Dawes. I was going to say, Dawes, the other thing is, you know, as Catherine says, you know, the weather's going to be better or is improving anyway. At the moment, I think we've got the sun out, which is fantastic. But it's historically sort of late April, beginning of May is the prime time to sell a country house. And I just really hope that some of the people who are sitting on their hands at the moment, thinking that possibly are we out of the worst, will actually implement and move forward. I mean, years ago, you were told about houses a year in advance, and we used to get them ready for photographing and everything else a year ahead. Now it's very much more lastminute.com. So I think we're all sitting there waiting for the phone to ring and get these new instructions and get them out there.
And what about stuff like, sorry,
Dawes. Ed, do you feel that more and more of your clients will want to bring these houses to the market formally, instead of kind of keeping it quietly under the table?
It's a very good point, because I think at one stage we were up to about 50% was low key, you know, bottom drawer, not on the internet, and that will change. And I think now that we've got the weather and the market is in front of us, I think everybody should go fully onto the market, because we've got what we call dormant buyers, somebody who sees it advertised for the first time, not really thinking of moving, but do. So you really cover the whole market. And I think, you know, probably not something that Catherine wants, but she would love to hop in there and grab something quickly for a client. But for our clients, you know, we need to air these things properly and get the best possible price.
Yeah.
So Rupert, yes, you're right. I hope more stuff will come onto the open market, because it just encourages everybody.
Actually, interesting question here, and there's no right or wrong answer to this, but Rupert and Ed, how do you view working with someone like Catherine, with an agent, as opposed to a buyer like me direct, for example? What are the pros and cons? I'm sure there aren't any cons, but
well, with Catherine, no cons at all.
Dawes, I think with a good buying agent, for the selling agent, when they know there's a good buying agent on board, it makes a massive difference.
Right.
It really does, for all numbers of reasons. I think that, you know, they know the market. You know that you can talk to them openly. You know their buyer is obviously very serious. So there's no doubt that you know, I think a number of estate agents feel happier dealing with a good buying agent. Yeah.
And would you echo that, Ed? You have to, obviously, on this.
I've got to. Catherine's sitting there, so no. Shall I tell you something? The only negative is that you've got one other person in the line of communication.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you know, it's it's just a lot of pluses. And I think, as Rupert says, I think the most important thing is that they have they know their buyers, they've checked them out, so financially they're sound and everything else. So we know that when we submit an offer, Catherine's client is good to go.
Yeah.
So it should all go through. There's very little chance of it falling through.
And it's quite daunting. I mean, way back when, it seems quite a long time ago, when I moved out of London, or our family moved out of London, I used an agent, because it's quite a daunting process, because, you know, you have no idea about schools, right? You've got a million friends with children at different schools, and all sorts of things, lots of things to consider. We used an agent, and I really didn't regret it. It just saved us a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
Huge amount of time.
We always ask clients, you know, once we completed, to say, you know, do you feel that was worthwhile? And you know, they've always said yes and gone on to recommend us to friends. So I feel like we feel like a bit of a luxury at the beginning, but actually I feel like we sort of earn our pennies.
Yeah.
And of course, in London, our last two acquisitions were houses which were both off market.
Right.
And, you know, so we used the contacts that we knew in the area that we specialize in and knocked on their door.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the power, and that's the value of a really, really good buying agent.
Yeah.
And also a very good buying agent will have a really good relationship with all the agents. And you just hope that you are one of, you know, you hope that you're top of the list.
Yeah.
Or in the top few that is going to get that phone call.
Yeah. And Catherine, what if our members watching this video or reading about this in a newsletter and stuff are thinking of moving out, what are the pitfalls? What should they be looking out for? I mean, do people, do they choose, is it school first and then house, or house first then school? How does that work?
That's a really good question, actually. That's probably the question that comes to us mostly, is who do you, are you house led or are you school led? Actually, I think if you've got younger children, if you're at prep school age, you'd be led by the school and then do a 20-minute sort of radius around it, because, you know, school run in the country isn't like in London. You know, you could be easily doing little country roads 20 minutes, which feels like quite a long time. So choose the school first. I think that's really, really important. It also means you're focused. It means you are, from our point of view, it means you are, you know, we've got a very clear area to work to, and actually the more focused the search is, the better.
Yeah.
So do your homework in schools. I think now schools are doing tours, and I think that's all open again now. So I think, you know, have a look at as many schools as you can within the area, and then once you're in, you know, sign us up.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I've got mates who definitely made an extra move on top of having moved out to the wrong area. Yeah. And suddenly found, as you said, that school run might not look very much, but my God, you're doing it 4 times a day. Backwards. I think
20 minutes, anything 20 to 25 minutes, anything more than that, you'll suddenly look at 2 hours in the car every day, and it doesn't work.
I've often wondered why, and maybe they do behind the scenes, estate agents don't tie themselves in with schools. You should be sponsoring all these prep schools.
I think you should all move back. I think you should all move back into London. It's a 5-minute.
And do you,
Rupert, can I just ask you one question? I mean, because I always get asked, you know, when I go and see somebody and we're having a sort of chat about their house in the country, they always ask, well, you know, what's London doing? And overseas buyers, I mean, they must be on hold, are they, because of COVID, travel problems and.
Yeah, they are. I mean, look, the one market which has been really badly affected the last year,
yeah,
very top end, and it's mostly the big apartments. Yeah, it's a big apartment, and that is totally internationally driven. You know, big apartments, especially those about outside space, are affected. But otherwise, the market is good. You know, there's definitely, if you speak to your sales officers, I bet you they're all having a really good time. And and it's always, I mean, the house market's very strong. Looking at statistics, you know, that the house sales have rocketed in terms of compared to apartments. And that's
outside space, is it?
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, one question for you. We're going to wrap up in a minute. It's been really interesting. One question. So we do a lot of this stuff with headmasters who have had a horrible year, right? So they've had to adapt in really more ways than almost anyone. But like all these things, there's always something good that's come of this nightmare. And for the schools, it's about adoption of technology, which they desperately needed to do, and they've had to do it, and they've done it really, really well, in my view. What would you say individually? I'm going to go Catherine, Charlotte. Look, who's Charlotte for? Calling you Catherine all morning. Catherine, I'm going to go to you first. What would you say that has come for your business? You've learned from COVID that you would carry forward and beyond COVID.
Carry on beyond COVID. I think we've certainly learned to juggle. We've become multitaskers, which we've all got young children, so we've all become sort of used to doing sort of two different hats on. We've really got to know our buyers really, really well. We feel like we've been through a lot with them. The ones we've had since last year, we've got to know them so well, and actually I think that poises us in a good position to put when the market wakes up again. So that's one thing. I think also to really know your market. We're getting calls about people who are wanting us to buy things sort of far and beyond in Kent, and we stick to what we know really, really well. And I think that's what we've probably learned in the last 6 months.
Okay, cool. Rupert, what about you?
Time management. Time management. I mean, massively. I think that cut out the meetings which are unnecessary. I mean, Zoom has been unbelievable for everyone over last year. And I think for our market, virtual tours. I think virtual tours now are almost an absolute must for every property. Yeah.
Interesting. And Ed, what about you?
Well, it's very interesting on that, because virtual tours, actually, we are getting more and more people sort of requesting them. And I think other agents have been doing it. We've had some pushback from clients saying, look, I really don't want the whole of the inside of my house being filmed, because I might have a nice picture or a nice piece of art or whatever it may be. So I think for us, what we have learned is just the art of communication. We've done all the Teams talks and everything else, but I think what we miss is just being in a room, in a dealing situation. So for us, I think that this has all been great, and we've managed to work from home and get through it all and run an efficient shop. It's still not as efficient and will not be as efficient as working out of your office. We still need those offices. So interesting for us. I think for us, we felt more negatives than probably positives.
Right.
But no, interesting going forward. I think we still need that human connection.
Yeah.
I think the virtual tour thing's interesting, and I can see it working in London. I think it's difficult in the country from our point of view. Can you hear the road noise? Can you see the big pylon in the corner? All of these things. People are making wild sort of hopes on pinning these houses. Actually, you need to be there. You need to be in person. You need to understand the roads and the pitfalls such as road noise, pylons, trains, that sort of thing. You need to be out and feeling it. So I think it works in London. I'm not sure if it works so well in the country. Yeah,
that's really interesting. And actually, funny enough, for us doing this kind of thing, which was totally born out of COVID, has been, I think, really beneficial. It allows people to kind of see into your world a little bit more, and it's only 10, 15 minutes, wherever it is. But people who have a proper product to offer, our membership and readers and what have you, it's great to be able to get you out there in your little celebrity squares that we've got here. It's very well, look, I'm going to let you get back to your day job. Catherine, thank you so much, and hope everything goes well with Hutton Bubear. Rupert, keep cracking on, and I think I'm with you on London. Go London, right?
London. It's the best city in the world, Dawes.
Best city, and will remain that way. And Ed, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for coming, Ed from Knight Frank.
Real pleasure.
And look forward to catching up with you soon.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dawes.
All right. Fantastic. Thanks, Dawes.